We're delighted to be launching B4 in Cambridge and already have connections with businesses based in Cambridge who have branched into Oxford or who have established offices in Oxford. We've been warmly welcomed by our new connections, many of whom will be joining us on today's show. But first, let's take a look at some interesting facts about Cambridge. Cambridge is famous for its university, currently one of the best in the world, and its scientists. It is the town where the atom was first split, where the structure of DNA was discovered, where Charles Darwin developed the theory of evolution, where Isaac Newton developed his theory of gravity, and where Stephen Hawking used to live and work. It has been home to some of the greatest thinkers of the last 500 years. But Cambridge isn't all academia. Pink Floyd, one of the world's most famous rock bands of the 60s and 70s, was formed in Cambridge. The band's founder, Syd Barrett, was born in Cambridge in 1946 and died in Cambridge in 2006. Many other members of the band were also educated in the city too. Cambridge University has produced 89 Nobel Prize winners over the years in no less than 6 different disciplines. These disciplines being physics, peace, chemistry, medicine, literature and physiology. Today's rules for football were first established in Cambridge in 1848. Parker's Piece in the city centre was where the first official game of football was played. It was these rules that formed the basis for the FA's official rules in 1863. Cambridge is also a thriving place for business. In recent years, Cambridge has become a tech hub, dubbed the Silicon Fen for its plethora of startups. It's estimated that 18% of the UK's gaming industry is based here, alongside a host of science and technology companies, including AstraZeneca and Arm, with some of them valued in the billions. Now let's meet some of our new Cambridge members.
Ian, hi, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Richard, how are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Not too bad, thanks. And I really appreciate you joining us. You've had quite a year as CEO of Cambridge United and chairman of Cambridge Arts Theatre.
It has been a very unusual year on both fronts, as you can imagine. With the football club, we, this time last year, stopped playing football and we didn't know when we'd start again. And we had to then go through a process of actually starting to rebuild a team. There's a lot of players out of contract, but we didn't know when we'd play again. And football, as you probably know, generates most of its income from fans, and they weren't allowed in. We didn't know when they would be allowed in. And so it was an exercise really in business terms of forecasting and analysing where we might be on various scenarios. And we went through loads of scenarios, taking us through the whole of what is now this season without fans or not starting until November. We had all sorts of scenarios mapped out. And then we worked out how to fill the gap because there was going to be a funding gap. And we did that in various ways. I think the first key thing was we secured extra investors, which may seem a bit of an odd thing to do in the depths of a pandemic when you don't know when your income is going to start again. But we've got 2 really good investors based in the US, and our main majority shareholder is also based in the US, although from Cambridge. So that gave us a bedrock of support going forward, but we accessed all the help we could get.
Were they difficult, awkward, strange conversations to have with investors at a time when you didn't have that income coming through the gate?
No, not really. They're big, intelligent business people in the US, and they could see beyond the end of COVID. So they could see that we were in a good shape, but for the effect of COVID. So no, it was actually a very good and direct conversation. But we also accessed all other forms of funding we could get. Our landlords, Grosvenor, really good landlords, let us off rent for a quarter, which was great. We accessed furlough. We actually learned what furlough meant, like everyone else, and we used that to great effect. We lobbied the Premier League to give us some funding, along with all other 72 EFL clubs, and that proved fruitful in the end, although it did take us through till December to get that deal over the line. So there was a lot of effort went in alongside the uncertainty. It was the first time since World War II that play had been suspended. So it was breaking new ground for everyone. But what did come out of it, certainly in League Two, where we operate at the moment, there was a great sense of unity amongst clubs and a real togetherness. And during that period as well, as we started to come through lockdown number 1 in the summer, how do you get fans back? And Cambridge United were the first club in the UK to host a competitive game of football with fans, because we were part of a pilot project. And that's a little vignette really of the organisation of the club, that in that chaos that there was of COVID, we could organise ourselves sufficiently to be one of the 2 league clubs to get fans back.
And you've lost the gate money. You've taken on a load of new costs in terms of like COVID testing, etc., and all the mobilisation and logistics that goes around that. I presume that's what a lot of the funding was used. Was that what the Premier League funding was used for?
Premier, you have a hole in your finances because there was gate money and now there's not gate money, and so we had to find other ways of filling it. But one of the other ways actually has been live streaming of the games, and perversely, our fans have probably seen more of Cambridge United this season than in a normal season, because they're watching all of the games on iFollow. They can watch home and away games. You can imagine that fans going away to Barrow-in-Furness or Exeter for a Tuesday night, there are only a very small number that make that trip. But with iFollow streaming, we're getting probably regularly 1,200, 1,300 fans buying passes. And they're not watching it on their own. They're watching it with their mates and the family, obviously in their bubbles. So that we're probably reaching an audience of 5,000-6,000 people, even more, every game. So oddly, in this season, the fans haven't been allowed into the stadium. We'll be getting a lot of interest, a lot of eyeballs on watching us. And that's very good because we're top of the league.
Well, yeah, I was going to come on to that. But just quickly mentioning other sort of revenue streams, not getting fans in, you're not getting that discretionary spend going on around that the whole match day experience. Are you getting a lot of more sort of merchandise sales to all 4 corners of the world?
Oddly, yeah, as another plus, we normally have 2 people working in our shop. Well, we reduced that to 1 and put 1 on furlough. So we reduced the staffing cost, the staffing numbers by half, but our revenue's gone up. We've sold more stuff online than we did by opening the shop. And it has been going to all 4 corners of the world, including the US, to our new owners. I think they've contributed a bit to the sales. But it just shows that actually being adaptable and being quick off the mark, you can cope with a lot of difficult stuff.
Yeah, it's a conversation I had with a lot of people. It's amazing how quickly you have to adapt when you need to, rather than you're given time to sort of plan for a scenario. This caught us all off guard, but a lot of businesses have, we use that well-worn word, pivoted for the better. So we can't stop there on the football. Obviously, you're flying high, and you mentioned in your notes to me before we joined how you were rank outsiders with the bookies. It's nice to prove them wrong.
Yeah, it's lovely. If I bet, then I could be a rich man, but I don't bet. In fact, I'm not allowed to.
You're not allowed to anyway.
I'm not allowed to, but I don't anyway. But at the start of the season, we'd pretty much been written off as a team that was not going to go very far. We'd signed some odd signings, they thought, those commentators, and we've proved them wrong because we've been consistently in the top 3 for nearly all of the season, all of 2021. And what it shows is that actually the power of management, of football management in this case, to identify players who could work well together, coach them really well, get them bonded as a team. The team spirit in the dressing room is amazingly strong, and they will walk through walls for each other. And although none of the players in particular have done great things in their own clubs before, bring them together and meld them into a team. And we're achieving records. So Paul Mullin, our top scorer, is on now 25 goals for the season, a new club record, which has stood for 35 years. And yeah, we are sitting at top of the league. One of the other things about teamwork is that we consistently get our games done. Through careful COVID planning, we have not had any COVID infection for a senior player through the whole season. We've only had one game that's been put off because of COVID, and there was one because of frozen pitch in Salford. But we've worked really hard to get our games done. So we played a lot more games than others, and they've had to play catch up. And there was a sense, oh, well, they will catch up. They've got games in hand. But actually, it's not the same as points. And a lot of them have not caught us up. And we still sit top of the league.
Yeah, best to have the points in the bag rather than potential.
We've got 8 games to go. So let's not count our chickens. A lot can happen in 8 games. But we're hopeful we'll get through it.
Well, if it's anywhere like Oxford today, it's nice and sunny where you are. But we've got snow next week, apparently, so that could set the men apart from the boys.
Indeed, yeah. Well, we've played in some very cold conditions, believe me.
I'm sure you have. I think our first communication was after a post that you put on LinkedIn. I've lost all track of timing, so you have to correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was about October last year when I first got in contact with you, and you kind of came back to me. I think you put up a post about I think you had an award, a community award of some sort. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was a post that you were thanking everybody around the club for the spirit and the togetherness that the club had developed over that period, and it really struck a chord with me, and that's obviously been a key part of the reasons for success.
I think that was about the community trust, and we have a Cambridge United Community Trust which sits alongside the football club, which really aims to use the power of football to influence people for the good. It is using sport to help get people fit. One of the key programs we have is Men v Fat, getting men to play sport. But we do a whole range of disability football, cystic fibrosis football, Downs football, blind football, and it's just getting people active. And that trust was doing really well before the pandemic hit. And then when it hit, we pivoted, to use the word earlier, our resources of Cambridge United to benefit the local community. So our kitchens, normally used for hospitality, were used for building and making food for the community. Players and coaching staff went to deliver food to the community. We ran online fitness sessions, which got a great amount of traction. We ran online teaching sessions for kids, teaching them about maths, but using examples from football. So we just used our resources in the best way we could whilst they weren't being used for other things. And that drew a lot of support. We make the point that we're more than just a football club. We are about a community football club that really cares about the community we're in, and we want to make a difference. And I think COVID showed just what we can do.
And as if being CEO of a football club hasn't been tricky enough over the last 12 months, you're also chair of CAT, Cambridge Arts Theatre. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how it's been for the theatre over the past 12 months?
Yeah, I got the double, didn't I? Football.
I was just about to say you were a glutton for punishment, but that would have been a bit unfair. But...
Yeah, actually, they're both great institutions in Cambridge, and Cambridge Arts Theatre has been running since 1936. Not quite as long as the football club, but still been a part of the fabric of our great city. And for the theatre, it was a similar problem to the football club. Immediately, we have to close. We cannot sell tickets, and tickets is what drives our revenue. And so, again, we went through the process of furlough. We've got a really good chief executive in the shape of Dave Murphy, who really grabbed hold of the issue early on. And we just did, again, plan for various scenarios and worked our way through them. We've been fortunate to receive 2 large grants from the government on the Cultural Recovery Plan, which has made a real difference. And now, as we're coming through it and looking forward, we're looking to be programming in June through till Christmas for the Panto. So we've got pretty much a full program now booked in to take us through to Christmas.
So very much feast and famine then, in terms of football and arts, and going into the rest of 2021. Hopefully it's going to be a buoyant period for both of your concerns.
Yeah, they're both going to bounce back. Not that the club have to bounce back from very far, because we're doing very well, but you get my point. We'll be up and at it in the next few months.
And in terms of Cambridge as a whole, obviously a lot of businesses have had their massive challenges. There's some that have really flourished in the last 12 months. But what do you see as sort of key inhibitors to economic growth over the next 12 months, 5 years, etc.?
Well, I think just the first thing to say about Cambridge is that it is and has been insulated quite well, very well, against recessionary pressures for many, many years. I've been in Cambridge now 36 years. I've managed my way through various recessions in my previous career as a lawyer. And there are a number of key elements which gives Cambridge that recession insulation. We've got two great universities. We've got two great hospitals, Addenbrooke's and the Royal Papworth. And we've got a technology industry, both in computing and biotechnology. And in relation to the tech industries, there's lots of companies. Now, occasionally one will fail, because that's in the nature of dynamic business in that sector. But a lot of them don't. Then people are recycled into other businesses. So you've got the combination of public sector, quasi-public sector in universities, health, and then you've got the private sector in tech. And that really creates a bedrock of employment in Cambridge. And you can see the growth in Cambridge over the last 15 years. Cambridge Ahead, which I chaired for some years, produces annual data, and it's well worth looking at the Cambridge Ahead website to look at data for growth of Cambridge. And it's been very significant, far outstripping the rest of the UK. So what will inhibit growth? Well, there was a report which again was led by Cambridge Ahead, called the Cambridge and Peterborough Independent Economic Review. And I'd urge anyone to Google that. It was led by Dame Kate Barker, leading economist. And that came to a number of conclusions. And the key one for Cambridge was it needed to sort out its transport problem. And that is that transport getting around Cambridge is just so unpredictable. Okay, it's a bit more predictable at the moment because of COVID, but that will change. And it was just so difficult to get around at certain times. You could never predict how long it would take to get from A to B, even if they're only 2 miles apart. So their view in the Independent Economic Review is that we need to resolve transport. And that, I think, means a really high quality public transport system. And the Mayor of Cambridgeshire, James Palmer, has really been championing what's called CAM Metro, or CAM, and as a way of getting around. And that involves tunnels under Cambridge. It's quite a bold plan. And again, it's worth looking, Googling CAM to see what the ideas are. They're pushing ahead with that. And I think that would be a really great and transformational step for Cambridge. If we don't do that, the independent review concluded that between 2027 and 2030, rather than seeing a growth in jobs, we'd see a decline, and the Cambridge economy would start to decline. And if you're in government at the moment, I guess the clear message to government is, of all the places in the UK you don't want to see decline, it's Cambridge and the area around it, because this is a hub for brilliant technology, which will set the UK apart and does set the UK apart. So it needs the support to get us through this, but I'm confident we will.
Fantastic. Ian, well, great to get an insight into Cambridge through your two concerns and also a concern for the future for Cambridge. I'm sure our Oxford members will enjoy hearing from you and connecting with you in due course, and hopefully we'll get you back on B4 TV at some stage in the future. And good luck in the next 8 games.
Thank you very much, Richard.
And who have you got lined up for Panto?
I couldn't possibly say. I couldn't possibly say.
Excellent. Good to see you, and thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So I'm joined by Will Rook from Carter Jonas in Cambridge. Hi, Will. How are you?
Good, thank you, Richard.
Good to see you as one of our more recent Cambridge B4 members. Will, give us a bit of background about what you do at Carter Jonas and what your sort of area specialities are at Carter Jonas in Cambridge.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been at Carter Jonas now for about 6 years. I was originally at a company called Januaries, who were a local firm, and they were bought out by CJ in 2015. So I specialise in commercial agency development, particularly on the investment side, so buying and selling commercial properties. And we've got a team of about 10 people here who cover all aspects of commercial agency from the Cambridge office. And we've also got offices scattered around the country, Oxford, London, Bath and Birmingham being the key ones, as well as one up in Leeds.
Excellent. And obviously, I mean, you specialise in commercial property, and depending on who you speak to, everybody's got different views about will they go back into the office or will they need as much space. And it'd be good to get a take on how things have been for you and your colleagues over the last 12 months.
Yeah, well, obviously everyone's had an unprecedented change to their lifestyles the last 12 months, haven't they? And it's been no exception here at CJ. And when the pandemic first kicked off, we all sort of had to work from home. There's a few of our staff actually who have contracts with NHS, High Speed 2, those sorts of critical infrastructure companies, and they were classed as key workers. So actually, whilst they were sort of allowed about, the rest of us had to sort of work from home. And it's worked really well. I think there's a bit of concern that the market would dip and the income would tail off and people would just sit on their hands. And we're certainly seeing on the occupational side where we've got tenants who have lease events coming up. They're certainly sort of not rushing to make a long-term decision on their futures at present. They're sort of seeing how the market plays out. And as a result, we've not seen a huge amount of activity in terms of leasing compared to what we're used to. I mean, average take-up in Cambridge is around 700,000 to 800,000 square feet a year. In the last 12 months, we only saw half of that, that's sort of 450,000. So there's a real dip down from what we're used to. But having said that, the market itself has been pretty busy on the transactional side. Cambridge is still a huge magnet for funds to place money. And we've been certainly going to see benefits from that going forward.
So, I mean, yeah, just to touch on Cambridge as a place, and I mean, you mentioned there that it's a bit of a magnet for investment, and obviously we're always drawing comparisons between Oxford and Cambridge for obvious reasons. But maybe you can give us sort of your insight into the benefits that Cambridge offers for investment and for businesses looking to relocate or expand in Cambridge, and what you see are the real sort of plus points to help propel Cambridge forward.
Yeah, so Cambridge obviously has a very well known and established university, and as a result, it acts as a bit of a kind of linchpin for activity that takes place on the tech and science parks. And what we've really seen is a lack of supply and an increase in demand, and that's just put a lot of pressure on not just the parks, but also the CBD. I mean, rents in Cambridge are sort of £48.50 a square foot now, sort of headline rents, which is comparable to West London and the better parts of the Thames Valley. And that's come on leaps and bounds. I think that's up sort of 36% in the last since 2015. You just sort of see the growth in that. It's been driven really, I think, particularly because it's flight to quality. A lot of investors, when times are difficult, like they have been the last 12 months, investors and funds really want to put their money into a bit of a safe haven. And I think they see Cambridge as that safe haven with the university and the tech and the science industries that are clustered here. And of course, looking forward, we don't have to worry too much about, there's a lot of question marks at the moment about the role of the office and whether working from home is here to stay. But in places like Cambridge, a lot of these jobs, you can't do them at home. People need the labs, they need the research areas, they need the colleagues to work with that they can't, you can't do that independently. So those clusters are always going to thrive. And I think that's why we've seen so much interest in here, interest in Cambridge over the last, well, at least the last 6 months, if not longer.
I mean, I always think of getting to Cambridge is quite difficult, but maybe you'll put me straight there. I mean, you're less than an hour from London. and obviously the finance side of London as well. So maybe sort of make Cambridge accessible to the rest of the world if you can in 30 seconds.
Yeah, of course. Well, as you say, it's an hour from London, 49 minutes, I think you find, Richard, on the train if you take the fast one from King's Cross. And obviously we'll talk about the Oxford-Cambridge Arc. I mean, that's going to be fantastic when East West Rail comes in. I think they've slated 2028 for that. So still got a few years to wait, but you can already see the clustering that's happening along the Milton Keynes, Bedford, all the sort of places in between, fighting for position to try and get some of the action.
So obviously a difficult year for all of us, but you can see some definite bright shoots, bright spots in the future, and obviously an awful lot going for the area. We're looking forward to working with a lot more businesses in Cambridge. What would you say the headline business? Obviously, someone like AstraZeneca obviously caught a lot of the headlines over the last year. Other big organisations to look out for locally. ARM.
Yeah, the other big success story is ARM, of course. ARM make the microchips that everybody has in their smartphones, in their iPhones, and their Galaxies. And they started off as a Cambridge infancy tech firm, and they're huge now. They've got a massive campus down by Peterhouse. We've just actually acting for them on a pre-let of 120,000 square feet for a new office down there. And that's really going to sort of consolidate their position in the Cambridge market. So ARM are one that are already here. One to keep an eye on going forward are Cambridge Medical Robotics. They span out of a startup just outside Cambridge, and they make medical arms which doctors can use in surgery. So doctors in India, for example, could operate on patients in the UK using these arms. And they've got a new campus up at Milton, just outside Cambridge. But they've been valued recently as £1 billion firm. So they're one of sort of Cambridge's very quick growth £1 billion success stories. So I'll keep an eye out for them.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Well, lovely to see you. Thanks for the insight into Cambridge, and we look forward to catching up with you soon.